New Directions by Maya Angelou. I already have some things highlighted, and as we read, I'm going to go over these things because they are quite important to the story, and I want you to think about how they relate to the theme or the setting or the central idea and things like that. So before we get started, we see the first thing I have highlighted is 1903, and I want you to brainstorm that. I want you to think about life in 1903. What would that have been like? There was little to no technology. They definitely didn't have TVs in their home or cell phones or a lot of things that we have today. And so as we read, think about that and how it applies to your character choices and things like that. In 1903, the late Mrs. Annie Johnson of Arkansas found herself with two toddling sons, very little money, a slight ability to read and add simple numbers. To this picture, add a disastrous marriage and the burdensome fact that Mrs. Johnson was a Negro. When she told her husband, Mr. William Johnson, of her dissatisfaction with their marriage, he conceded that he too found it to be less than expected and had been secretly hoping to leave and study religion. I have this highlighted because, as I'm sure most of you know, what irony is. That means when you expect one thing to happen, but the exact opposite happens. This is ironic because he's leaving his marriage to pursue Christianity, that religion. And as most of you know, those who are practice Christianity, once you are saved or living for Jesus in the Christian faith, you shouldn't get a divorce. And this is exactly what he's planning to do. It then goes on to say, he added that he thought God was calling him not only to preach, but to do so in Enid, Oklahoma. He did not tell her that he knew a minister in Enid with whom he could study and who had a friendly unmarried daughter. This is also ironic in that, it's not only would you not get a divorce if you're trying to practice, and by practice he means going in to be a preacher or something like that, you wouldn't or shouldn't get a divorce, and you especially shouldn't leave your wife for another woman, which is what we can see he's planning to do. They parted amicably, Annie keeping the one-room home and William taking most of the cash to carry himself to Oklahoma. Annie, over 6 feet tall, big-boned, decided that she would not go to work as a domestic and leave her precious babes to anyone else's care. There was no possibility of being hired at the town's cotton gin or lumber mill, but maybe there was a way to make the two factories work for her. In her words, I looked up the road. I was going and back the way I came, and since I wasn't satisfied, I decided to step off the road and cut me a new path. I want you to think about how that applies to life and how that could be a possible theme of the story. She told herself that she wasn't a fancy cook, but that she could mix groceries well enough to scare hunger away and keep from starving a man. She made her plans meticulously and in secret. Meticulously means orderly. One early evening, to see if she was ready, she placed stones in 2 5-gallon pails and carried them 3 miles to the cotton gin. She rested a little and then discarded some rocks. She walked in darkness to the sawmill 5 miles farther along the dirt road. I want you to think about why a woman in the early 1900s, and especially an African American woman, would decide not to take the safe or shorter, broader path, but decide to walk in secret the farther way to the sawmill. On her way back to her little house and to her babies, she dumped the remaining rocks along the path. That same night, she woke into early hours boiling chicken and frying ham. She made dough and filled the rolled out pastry with meat. At last, she went to sleep. The next morning, she left her house carrying the meat pies, lard, an iron brazier, and coal for a fire. Just before lunch, she appeared in an empty lot behind the cotton gin. As the noon bell rang, she dropped the savors into boiling fat, and the aroma rose and floated over to the workers, who spilled out of the gin, covered with white lint, looking like specters. Most workers had brought their lunches of pinto beans and biscuits or crackers, onions, and cans of sardines, but they were tempted by the hot meat pies which Annie ladled out of the fat. She wrapped them in newspapers which soaked up the grease and offered them for sale at a nickel each. Although business was slow those first days, Annie was determined. She balanced her appearances between